Thank you for joining Minority Alliance Organization meeting today. One of the things that we are talking about today is, I put a post on the group page. It was initially a meme about basically about credit, about how, your credit score says that you can't afford a $700 a month mortgage, so go ahead and pay $1,200 a month rent. And the deeper meaning behind that is, when you really look at it, and one of the biggest obstacles that, minorities have, and really most Americans have, is being able to get over the hump of the, kind of the credit industry, understanding and having financial and economic literacy, and being able to navigate the system, and even understanding what the system is. If I went to anyone, most lay people, and especially in the minority community, and I were to ask, hey, how's a credit score, tabulated? They couldn't tell you. And I could barely explain it, So, these things are this is one of those situations where, we have a system that we are basically, for lack of a better phrase, a slave to, because we can't do anything without it. And we can't get to the hallmark or the gateway of prosperity in America, which is home and business ownership. And we can't get there without a really good understanding of, the credit system. And this is one of the things that, was spoken about during the campaign last year that the Biden administration, or the would-be Biden administration, talked about. One of the things that they wanted to address was being able to make it easier and make it better for minorities coming from situations where they did not start off with money, and how do you get into business ownership, and how do you become a first-time homeowner and be able to gain some of the equity that makes financial fluidity possible. And to this point, and granted, I get it, we're entering the 10th month, first year of this administration. I know there's a lot of other things going on, but we haven't heard any rumblings of any type of legislation on that regard. And this is, and we'll lead into another topic a little bit later when we talk about voting and voting rights. But this is one of the things that we need to be cognizant of, whether you vote Democrat or you vote Republican, what we're getting from these people versus what is promised to us, and what we do about it when you don't get any of those things that are promised. These are the things that we need to look at, and we need to really kind of boil down what it is that, kind of not just what puts us in this position, but what we can actually do about it, and the type of things that we're looking for when we're trying to pick candidates who will actually fight for these things and know what they are, and be able to explain them in simple terms, and be able to kind of give people just what they need. Like, if you're starting off and, you're one of the millions upon millions upon millions of Americans who don't have, any substantial money in the bank, and you have a job that is just enough to pay the bills that you have right now. Well, how do you actually get ahead? Because the people who are already ahead will just tell you, well, do what I do now and you'll be fine. And that's not the case. And, a lot of it is just kind of glad handling to their own narrative. And what's happening in the neighborhoods and happening in the real streets is a completely different animal. So, Colin, I wanted to kind of kick it over to you a little bit and discuss, like, not just what we're not getting from, elected officials on the type of legislation that we need to navigate and deal with this situation, but what we can do, on the ground level to kind of work for ourselves, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to just rely on politicians to do it for us. We have to do some of this work ourselves. So, kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, even when it comes to that, I kind of put up a post maybe last year. I have to go back and find it and repost it on the page there. But I actually have a friend who was working with getting people, life insurance and going back and actually helping them fix their credit and things of that nature. And these are things, as you said, what steps can we take ourselves? These are steps that we have to take ourselves, to get the ball rolling in the right direction. And, whether legislation comes along with that or not, at least we're already, pushing that narrative of basically if we can fix these type of issues within our own communities by starting to make these, steps and strides of like, if I find somebody that's helped me, within my credit situation, or somebody who's helped me, find a financial avenue that's helped out within, affecting my credit in the long run, and things of that nature. It's on us to kind of pass this information along to each other and not be, as they say, quote unquote, crabs with the information and withholding it from one another. This is things that we have to go, beyond our, sometimes beyond our limits to teach to somebody else, within our own communities. So I think, that's kind of the start of, what you're saying, beyond legislation, beyond the push that we should be putting on elected officials, to start, drafting different legislation and different bills and things of that nature that can go towards helping these things within our own communities. Kind of switching over to voting also, and this kind of has something to do with how you were saying, accountability and, keeping account on, who's voting which way, whether you vote, Democrat or Republican. We believe in voting independent, and choosing who's going to be best for that situation. So, when it comes to midterms that are coming up here, and that kind of goes into, the voting topic that we have today. Midterm elections is one that, most people, it kind of goes over their heads. And, the elections that happen in between the general elections, most people don't, show up in the same numbers as we showed up in, when it's like, oh, everybody was so against Trump, so they were willing to go out and vote, but we don't see that same passion when it comes to, a local election or election on a off year, things of that nature. So, we've really got to see the push there, for us reminding each other like, hey, make sure or check out this candidate, that's running, things of that nature, because these are things, other than general election years that people were not keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. I would say that right now we're in a very, very dangerous place. And what I mean by dangerous place, I don't necessarily mean physically. I mean, we are in grave, grave danger of falling into a pattern that we as minorities have fallen into for a really, really long time. That's a two-pronged thing. Number one, gearing up only when you're outraged, right? 2020, there's a lot of outrage. There were people who were sick of, the administration at the time. There were people sick of, the police killings and the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. There were, people that were just, motivated to action through their outrage. And that tends to die down in these off years. And midterm elections always see that gigantic dip. And the second danger is that we are, we're in danger of falling into the pattern of asking and needing things from officials, listening to their promises. Sometimes they get put in office, sometimes they don't. But then when they don't deliver on what it is that we're looking for, we tend to just look to the other side of already established politicians and try to put that establishment in, thinking that you would get something different. The problem that we're seeing is that we have moved to a point, and just as a child, you would move to a point where the things that you think are, the way you should behave are not conducive to what needs to happen. We have to understand that our normal patterns of going through these things when it comes to voting, they no longer apply. Number one, I posted a video onto the page. There's a comedian, John Oliver, who goes into great detail about different things that are going on. And it goes really, really deep into the efforts that are being done to kind of constrict and restrict voting of the working class. And I don't know too many minorities that are not in the working class. So this is us, and this is affecting us. directly because we move needles. Whether it's, mail-in voting because of the pandemic, whether it was 2008 and the election of Obama, whatever the case may be, we're motivated to action. Minorities move mountains, and people have seen that, and they would make moves to limit that. And we have to pay attention to that. And we have to stop getting so caught up in paying attention to, Congress people and senators, things like that, and start looking inward. And inward is where everything starts. I mean, we're talking school board, we're talking city council, we're talking mayor, state legislation, governor, because these are the things that affect your everyday life. I know I've spoken on this topic many, many, many times. And everything from the economic piece that we're talking about, to your own general rights, to your ability for those rights to move forward into the future, how included you will be in the system that we're looking for. It is not enough to expect these things from established politicians that we've been asking for this for years. It's on, taking a chance on, a 32-year-old in your community that you've identified who feels passionately about these things, and they make it to the school board, or this person makes it to city manager, or another person makes it into a city council person. That's how you change the system from within. More and more people who actually have had to live our fight and live our struggle has to actually get into a position where they can actually then help and do these things. And we're paying too much attention to the money and the media and all these other things. And, we're basically falling into a very, very well-crafted, hand-woven trap that they've been using to keep us in for such a long time, divided and arguing about things that do not matter, while we're getting absolutely destroyed and screwed over on the things that do. So, one of the things that I'm committed to doing is constantly pointing down, because we have to look local. We have to look ground level on all these things. And we have to start looking at the type of candidates that we can push forward, in the most local of local elections. Georgia, for example, next year, you got state legislation seats coming up. You got a governor seat coming up. There's all sorts of things that are going on. And we saw what happened in 2018 with that. We saw what happened in 2020 with that. So there are people that recognize this, and they want to keep things pushed down. And we absolutely must, now more than ever, way more important now than even in 2020, to be able to keep that energy going, because there are people looking to set things up, not just set things up for 2022, but set things up for 2024. And your rights and your ability to deal with what's going on with the pandemic, what's going on with your family, what's going on economically, whether or not you have viability going down the road, whether or not you will be able to afford a home, that is not on their radar at all. Police reform. Anybody seen that yet? Reform in the sentencing of, the way that justice is being done in our court system. That hasn't seen any movement yet. Protections for LGBT, protections for, immigrants. Like, we haven't seen any of those things, and you're unlikely to see them if you get a regime change. So where do we start? And we will start where we always start, in our own backyard, in our own neighborhood, in our own area, with the lowest of the low elections.
No, I definitely agree. But I mean, even on top of that, as you said, kind of the school boards, your local elected officials, those are the positions that are coming up within the next year or two, that we really need to be keeping an eye on, because these are the ones that are going to affect, the 2024 election and elections going forward. And even more so, and kind of in this period of time that we're in now, we're kind of in the period to where, who's ever elected in 2024, even as who is elected in 2020, are going to make laws, going forward that affect us for, 10, 15 years out. And this is kind of a, super critical time, within governance for us to be putting the right officials, in place, and electing the right people to make the right decisions currently.
Yeah, it's a gut check time for the minority community moving forward over the next year and some change going into this midterm election, and then the setup for the next couple of years after that. And what I mean by gut check time, we are in a situation right now where if you go back through our own lineage, and you go back through the last, 100 years of struggle and strife and things like that people have gone to, we are in a situation right now where for the first time as a minority community, we are about to hand off the reins to a generation and leave them in a more precarious position than we took. All of the struggles that others went through before, we had it a little bit better than the generation before us. And they had it a little bit better than the generation before them. And we are about to hand off to a generation and hand them a worse world than what we got. And that is something that, is almost unfathomable. And we have ability to do something about it. But if we allow ourselves to get caught up in all of the stuff that we talk about, all these different things, one of the things that's going on right now is that you have this, this reconciliation package that has all these different things in there. And these things would greatly impact the minority community. I mean, think about how many people cannot work because they don't have a babysitter because they can't afford one. Think about all the people who don't have transportation to work and haven't been able to have a reliable public transportation system to make sure that they can get to work. These are sort of things that, if they're on the table, we need to put as much pressure on officials as possible to make sure that it passes. And then if it doesn't pass, we need to be able to locally and electorally hold responsible anybody that stood in the way, because it's our progress. And we need to push forward people who will help us get to that type of progress, because nobody's looking for a handout. We work very, very hard for everything that we have and everything that we get. And we want the ability for that hard work to mean something at the end of the day. And when you get distracted and you allow yourself to get distracted by the latest scandal on Facebook and the latest, garbage going on with some celebrity or some, congressperson who doesn't even have committee assignments, so they have no real legislative power, makes a statement that gets everybody talking for the next week or so, we're falling into that well-woven trap that I talked about. And one of the things that I know I've definitely been committed to, from the beginning with this organization, is making sure to cut through the noise and just put out the information that's out there. Not necessarily my opinion on that information, but just the information, because we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to cut through this and be able to do better for ourselves, electorally, by getting knowledge, learning more, and being able to apply that to the things that we want. Killer Mike said it himself in 2020, strategizing, organizing. This is the time. And that time doesn't stop just because, one administration that we didn't like got voted out, or because this election cycle is over, or whatever the case may be. That struggle is continuous. I doubt that Martin Luther King only marched on election years. So we need to make sure that we're looking into this and making sure that we're continuing to push forward and not become stagnant with a status quo that does not have us in those plans. And that's really the message that I would give for everybody, moving forward into this, upcoming election season.
I mean, kind of sticking with how you were just talking about, stagnation and things of that nature, like around the time of Juneteenth and stuff like that, everybody wants to post on Facebook, how they're going to support this minority business or that minority business without, us seeing that that consistency, throughout the whole year. That shouldn't be the only time that people are supporting these businesses and things of that nature. And, it's always going to be, a thing that we make it within the organization to promote people actually spending money with minority businesses and things of that nature, so that they can actually, most minority businesses, let's be real, during this time period, are having a hard decision of, should we stay in business or should we kind of fold, because of still struggles, people were dealing with from last year financially and things of that nature, if they weren't able to receive the assistance and help and things of that nature that they needed. So, this is even more, as we said, during this time period, we got to be getting out and showing our support, even if you got to go out of your way sometimes, if you have the resources to go out of your way and spend money, with the minority company or anything of that nature, these are things that we have to make, emphasize on, and networking with different minority businesses and things of that nature.
Absolutely. The great myth of America is that individualism is going to lead you to prosperity. That only is true when you already have it. For all of us, when you think about opening a small business, for anyone, especially right now, you're having to deal with higher costs of goods, higher cost of labor, supply chain issues. Just being able to get things and get moving is so difficult right now. And then when you throw on top of it that minorities get business loans at a much lower rate than Caucasian communities and entrepreneurs would get, when you compile all of these things together, it's very, very difficult to run these things. And we're talking, people will, when the time is right, and one weekend a year they'll talk about Main Street over Wall Street and things like that. But we have the power to affect that every single day. And I would ask that, anybody do it, continue. If you know of a minority business out there, go visit that business, even if it is out of the way, even if it is a couple of dollars more expensive, post on that stuff. People do pay attention to social media. That can be taken advantage of if every time you walk into a minority business, you checked in from that minority business and let people know that you were there, and let people know that that's, a place that you should visit as well. And I would hope that, anybody that, that does that, is able to do so, because even that, it may be enough to support a business. And, I say it all the time, you never know, who's watching or who may see it and things like that. And we need that support. And, community is, the path to prosperity. An individual is going to be able to prosper a lot faster when the community is focused on the prosperity that it's looking for. So, I would ask everybody to, kind of, if nothing else, we can definitely do our parts by continuing to look out for one another and look out for those minority businesses and visit them and post from them and post pictures and let people know what's going on, and make sure that, everybody's a part of it, and, try to give them that leg up while the bigger fight goes on to make it easier for them to get a business started and stay in business. That's a larger fight. There are smaller fights that we can win, because there's no one stopping us from going to shop in one of those places. There's no one stopping us from posting about one of those places. So that's something that we can do, even on the small level. When someone says, well, I don't know what I can do, we can start there. That's a good place to start. And I think that'll be, good for everyone, both short term and long term.
Yeah. Also, I want to remind everybody, as we kind of spoke on the last episode, only me and Mark, have been committed to, creating this content, for the organization and things of that nature. So there, may go some time in between us being able to get together, with our day-to-day lives. But the things that we are promoting within the organization are not things that we leave once we're done doing these meetings, once we're done doing our videos, and then we just stop. No, we every day in our lives, we try to offer other minorities opportunities. We try to, help where we can within our own communities and be leaders within our own communities. And these are things that we got to remember, to take with us, going forward. Don't look for just, us, we post a new video on a new subject or something like that. And, that may bring up some more, information to you, and then you get out that day and you feel good for that day. These are things that we got to carry with, on the daily, and, different changes that we need to be making, for people, and offering different opportunities for people on the daily.
Absolutely. Reaching people is, a constant job, and it's a constant thing. And I shouldn't even use the word job. It's more like a passion, actually, because again, this isn't something that I do as a hobby. It isn't something that I get paid to do. It's something that I would do, any day for free, because I'm passionate about it, because I believe in.
Hold on, Mark. We wish we could probably do it every day full time, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paying the bills.
Absolutely, absolutely. But my thing is that as a, I'm passionate about it because I want us to do better. I rage every single day seeing the struggle that we go through, seeing the injustice that we go through, and seeing how hard it is just to survive in this world, and seeing how cold things are in a world that is so plentiful and full of food and full of opportunities. And I want better for all of us. And, I would definitely want, for us to have a stake in this country that claims to have a stake available for us. And we can definitely do that. And I think we can do better, but we just have to be able to push that envelope and push that needle. And obviously, it's a big task and it's a big thing. So no one person is going to do it alone. No two people are going to do it alone. It's going to continuously take the energy from others to be able to spread the message and be able to spread the word and be able to continue to talk about things and not let them go away, and to continue to vote and continue to look and pay attention and cut through the noise. And, it sounds like a lot, but realistically, we not only owe a bit of a debt to the people who laid down on those train tracks for us, but now we have to be able to hand things off and fight for that next generation. Because like I said before, we're not going to be giving them the world that we want it to, but we can definitely lay foundations for them to be able to find their way and for them to be able to do better. So, I would ask that of anyone who has ever heard any of our content, anyone who listens to our content, anybody who would share any of that content, to continue to do so, to continue to, to offer up any ideas and offer up anything that you think, even if you have a completely dissenting opinion, because we need that, because you don't learn anything by just going through it yourself. So, it is a community thing. We do need each other to make this stuff work. And so, that is my only wish moving forward, is that everybody understands that we are moving, together, and we can, hang together or hang together, as I heard someone say, right? And, we get an opportunity to have a voice in which one of those it ends up being.
No, that's the absolute truth, Mark. And, I want to thank you for making the time, out of your day, to get with me today. I know, as I said, we're both, in our personal lives juggling, a million one things. And, it sometimes get hard for us to, link up and do these videos with, the changes in our schedules and things of that nature. So I want to thank you for, continuing to make the time out of your schedule to make this important and, to keep pushing, the correct narrative with me, through the organization and growing this organization with me. And, for any of our listeners, thank you as always as listening, whether you're on the Audience platform, the YouTube platform, or just within the Facebook group for people who continue to push, our post or, even post in the group and things of that nature.
Yeah, Colin, I would just add on top of that, I would thank you for starting up this organization and keeping it going, at contributing your time, your money, your effort to all of that. And, for those who have contributed, for those who have offered opinions, for those who have listened to, these discussions, these conversations, for those who have on the YouTube platform, on Facebook, or on Audience, each and every one of these things, is one step closer to where we need to be. And I've said it 1,000 times before, you don't know which snowball you throw at the side of a mountain is going to start the avalanche, but one day it will. And when it does, we'll be able to show what we can do. So, I definitely appreciate your work and your effort on that.
Yes, sir. And, thank everybody for listening, who does catch this podcast, and, let it, be something to push you, in whatever topic that we were speaking on today, to get out and spread the word and the information within your own communities so that we can continue the ball rolling in the correct direction. And we look forward to the next meeting and, putting together some more great content going into the end of the year for, our viewers and our members.
Absolutely. You all take care and take care of each other.